Looking for a fast way to track what's moving online right now? Head over to Qnotables.com. It's a centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Boards. President Trump signs the National Defense Authorization Act on December 18, 2025. The bill authorizes major defense spending and sets policy priorities for the Pentagon for the coming year. The signing follows final action in Congress and comes as the White House highlights readiness, pay, and modernization provisions. The Department of Homeland Security posted a holiday-themed message featuring Norman Rockwell's Santa at the Map artwork. The image dates back to the Saturday Evening Post era and is commonly associated with American holiday nostalgia. Point. The United States has approved a record arms package for Taiwan valued at roughly $11.1 billion. The package includes precision weapons and systems intended to strengthen Taiwan's defense posture. The sale is moving through the congressional notification process and is expected to draw strong objections from Beijing. New reporting highlights allegations and investigative material tied to the Clinton Foundation, including claims of pay-to-play concerns raised in past investigative documents. Senator Chuck Grassley has released or referenced whistleblower-linked records that allege investigative steps were slowed or blocked. No new criminal finding was announced with these reports, but the disclosures are reigniting scrutiny. Point. Investigators are looking at a possible link between the Brown University mass shooting and the killing of MIT professor Nuno Loureiro. Authorities say they have identified a person of interest as they review surveillance video and other evidence. No arrest has been announced, and officials are urging the public to report credible tips. Senator Markwayne Mullin says a bipartisan bill aimed at expanding treatment options for children with cancer was blocked in the Senate after Senator Bernie Sanders objected. The measure is known as the Give Kids a Chance Act, and supporters say it would speed access to certain pediatric treatments and research pathways. The dispute is now fueling calls to bring the bill back for another vote. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered major changes to the military chaplain corps, including removing or replacing certain spiritual fitness materials he criticized as New Age. The Pentagon says the goal is to refocus chaplains on religious ministry and clarify their role across the force. The directive is already drawing attention from faith groups and civil liberties advocates. Trump Media and Technology Group announced a major deal to merge with fusion company Tay Technologies in an all-stock transaction valued at more than $6 billion. The companies say they want to pursue utility-scale fusion power, pitching it as a future energy source for high-demand needs like AI data centers. The deal still faces the usual regulatory and shareholder steps before closing. Venezuela has moved to escort oil shipments with naval assets as tensions rise over U.S. actions targeting sanctioned tankers. Reporting indicates some large crude carriers have been cleared to depart, even as the broader standoff continues. The situation is being watched closely because it affects oil flows, shipping risk, and regional stability. Point. In Brussels, farmer protests over trade policy escalated into clashes with police. Authorities used water cannons and tear gas after demonstrators threw objects and pushed toward barricades. The protests are tied to opposition to proposed trade terms that farmers say could undercut European agriculture. TikTok has agreed to sell its U.S. operations to a new joint venture led by American investors. The deal is designed to address U.S. national security concerns tied to Chinese ownership and data access. The transaction is expected to close in late January 2026, with governance and data controls shifting under the new structure. Looking for a fast way to track what's moving online right now? Head over to Qnotables.com. It's a centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas, and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Boards. President Trump addresses the nation. President Trump delivered a primetime address laying out what he called early results of his administration and his next steps. He highlighted border enforcement, inflation, and President Trump's address to the nation focused on what he described as a rapid turnaround in border security, the economy, and U.S. standing overseas. He opened by saying he inherited a mess, pointing to inflation and affordability, and he argued the country was harmed by the previous administration's policies. He also raised culture war themes, including criticism of transgender-related issues and woke ideology in schools, while framing his agenda as restoring order and normalcy. On the border, Trump said his administration stopped what he called an invasion, claiming that for 7 months, 0 illegal aliens were allowed into the country. He said his administration is deporting criminals and targeting foreign drug cartels, and he claimed drugs moved by ocean routes are down 94%. He argued that strong border enforcement did not require new legislation and said the change came from executive action and a new administration. Point. On foreign policy, Trump claimed major successes in a short period. He said he settled 8 wars in 10 months, destroyed the Iran nuclear threat, and ended the war in Gaza, adding that hostages were secured and returned, both living and dead. He presented these as proof of restored American strength and deterrence, and he tied them to his broader theme that the U.S. is respected again. Turning to affordability, Trump ran through a list of price claims, arguing that costs that rose under Biden are now falling. He cited declines in car prices, gasoline, hotel rates, and airfares, and he highlighted grocery-related examples, including saying Thanksgiving turkey prices were down versus the prior year and that egg prices were down sharply since March. He also claimed wages are rising faster than inflation and said job gains since he took office have gone to American-born workers. On trade and industry, Trump promoted tariffs as a central tool, arguing they pushed companies to build factories in the U.S. to avoid tariff costs. He claimed $18 trillion in investment has been secured, with growth in areas like manufacturing, automobiles, and AI. He also previewed what he called the largest tax cuts tied to his One Big Beautiful Bill, naming no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security, and forecasting a large refund season next spring. Trump's headline announcement was a warrior dividend for the military. He said more than 1.45 million service members will receive checks for $1,776 before Christmas, framing it as a tribute to the nation's founding in 1776. He connected the funding to tariff revenue and recently passed legislation, and he also claimed recruiting and enlistment are improving compared to the prior year. On healthcare, Trump said he is pushing steep prescription drug price reductions under a most favored nation approach and said a first round of price cuts would begin in January via a new website, trumprx.gov. He also attacked large health insurance companies and criticized the Affordable Care Act, arguing that more money should flow directly to consumers so they can buy their own insurance. He described this as a major step toward lower overall healthcare costs. Finally, Trump emphasized energy and housing. He said he declared a national energy emergency on day one and claimed gasoline is under $2.50 in much of the country, with some states hitting $1.99. He also said his administration plans major expansion of electrical generation capacity, and he linked lower energy costs to broader price declines. On housing, he claimed mortgage costs are already down and said he will soon announce a new Federal Reserve chair who favors lower interest rates, along with aggressive housing reform plans early in the new year, rices, and an America is Back message tied to jobs and investment. He also framed his agenda as reversing the Biden mess and argued the country is entering a new growth phase. He paired that with new announcements affecting troops and federal agencies. Southcom strike on terror-linked vessel. U.S. Southern Command says a U.S. joint task force carried out what it called a lethal strike on a vessel tied to a designated terrorist organization in international waters. Southcom described the action as a directed operation and said it was conducted under the direction of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Border wall expansion funding. The Trump administration says it will spend billions to build new border wall miles, with reporting pointing to roughly 230 miles of additional wall work and about $4.5 billion in planned spending. The administration is pitching the plan as a security and deterrence measure and says it will accelerate construction. Immigration groups are preparing lawsuits, while border state lawmakers are split between speed, cost, and property rights concerns. House vote on minors and gender-related medical care. The U.S. House passed a bill that would criminalize certain gender transition medical procedures for minors, including surgeries and some medical treatments. The vote was close, 216 to 211, and the bill now heads to the Senate, where its path is uncertain. Supporters argue it protects children from irreversible decisions. Point. HHS ends federal grants to the AAP. The Department of Health and Human Services is ending multiple federal grants to the American Academy of Pediatrics, totaling roughly $18 million. The administration says the funding cuts are part of a broader review of federal spending and program priorities. The AAP disputes the move and warns it could impact pediatric health initiatives and research. Congressional Democrats are calling for oversight and documentation of the decision process. NASA. DiskSat and a new administrator. NASA's DiskSat program says it is preparing for an upcoming launch into low Earth orbit, describing it as a new platform aimed at expanding small satellite capability. Separately, the Senate has confirmed Jared Isaacman as NASA administrator, putting a well-known commercial space figure in charge during budget fights and major program decisions. The leadership change is expected to shape Artemis timelines, contracting strategy, and NASA's balance between science and human spaceflight. Rocket Lab Electron launch. Rocket Lab has another Electron mission in the books under the banner, Don't Be Such a Square, continuing its cadence of small satellite launches to orbit. The company is positioning Electron as a reliable, dedicated launch option for customers who want specific orbits and timelines rather than rideshare schedules. The broader market pressure remains, more competition, tighter budgets, and customers demanding speed and certainty. Solar storm risk to Starlink. A new round of reporting is warning that severe solar storms can increase atmospheric drag in low Earth orbit, raising the risk of satellite loss and adding congestion risks during intense space weather events. Analysts say large constellations like Starlink are more exposed simply because of scale. The main risk isn't a movie-style instant collapse, but cumulative losses, maneuver limits, and collision risk if many satellites degrade at once under extreme conditions. $901 billion defense bill passes. Congress has passed a massive defense policy bill authorizing around $901 billion, setting Pentagon priorities and including a troop pay raise. The final package includes provisions on Ukraine and European security that do not align cleanly with every White House preference, underscoring that defense policy still runs through Congress. The measure also locks in policy directions on personnel, programs, and oversight, and now heads to the president's desk for signature. Venezuela tanker pressure and storage crunch. Reporting tied to tanker enforcement and U.S. pressure on sanctioned vessels says Venezuela's oil storage and tankers are rapidly filling, with estimates that capacity could max out in about 10 days. Analysts warn that if exports jam up, Venezuela may be forced to shut in production. Dan Bongino to resign from FBI leadership. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino says he plans to resign in January, ending a short, turbulent term as the Bureau's number 2. His tenure drew attention because of his background in media and politics, and because of internal tensions over direction, messaging, and credibility. The resignation reopens questions about stability at the top of federal law enforcement and what reforms, real or cosmetic, will follow next. Point. Brown University, shooting and security questions. A shooting tied to the Brown University area has raised new questions about campus area security planning and camera coverage. Investigators continue to sort through timelines, while public pressure is building for clear answers about prevention and response. Fox News host Jesse Waters highlighted the case on air, pushing the broader argument that elite institutions often underinvest in basic security and accountability until after an incident forces the issue. Trump admin versus Minnesota fraud. A Trump cabinet official is calling on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to resign over what they describe as repeated large fraud failures tied to state-administered programs. Walz's office disputes parts of the characterization and points to the complexity of COVID-era program abuse. The political fight is now moving into federal-state oversight territory, with pressure for audits, prosecutions, and changes in eligibility controls and payment verification systems. Immigrant sponsor liability warning. A renewed warning is circulating that if you sponsor an immigrant under an affidavit of support, you can be held responsible for reimbursing certain means-tested public benefits. This isn't a new idea. It's rooted in U.S. immigration law and has long been enforceable in specific circumstances. The practical impact depends on state and agency enforcement, but the legal exposure is real, and sponsors are being reminded to treat it like a serious financial contract. Epstein. Files release. Deadline. A new burst of political attention is building around a court-ordered release of categories of Epstein-related records, with a deadline approaching Friday. The timing overlaps with fresh legal moves by Ghislaine Maxwell seeking relief tied to claims about trial issues and evidence. Members of Congress and online commentators are already positioning for the fallout. The key detail: what is actually unsealed, what is redacted, and what, if anything, names new parties. AOC post sparks speculation about scheduling. Rep. Nurse Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted that viewers should watch political developments this week in light of the pending Epstein-related records release, pointing to the House schedule shifting before Friday. Leadership scheduling changes happen for many reasons, but the post is fueling speculation online. The clean takeaway is simple: Friday is now a political deadline, and both parties are preparing for whatever the document release does, or does not, show. Point. Assange and the Nobel Foundation dispute. Reports say Julian Assange has filed a complaint tied to the Nobel Foundation and the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize process, arguing the prize is being used in a way that violates Nobel's intent. The legal path and jurisdiction questions matter here, and it is not clear how far the complaint goes in practical terms. Still, it adds another headline to Assange's post-prison campaign to reframe his case as a free speech and anti-war issue. Bennett phone. Hack claim. An Iran-linked group is claiming it hacked the phone of former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Bennett has denied the claim, and reporting notes this kind of incident often involves exaggerated boasts mixed with selective proof drops. The real test is whether verifiable data appears and whether Israeli cyber officials attribute the intrusion credibly. Until then, it remains a claim under dispute, but it signals the ongoing cyber war around Israeli politics. Australia. Tightens hate speech laws after Bondi attack. Australia's government is moving to tighten hate speech laws after the Bondi terror attack, with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announcing tougher measures and higher penalties. The political argument is now whether the new rules are targeted enough to stop real threats without punishing lawful speech. Critics are also pushing for a deeper inquiry into prevention failures, while supporters say the country needs faster tools to stop radicalization and intimidation. Pentagon Christmas Worship Service. The Pentagon held a Christmas worship service hosted by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, featuring Reverend Franklin Graham and Christian musical guests. Supporters presented as a public signal of faith and morale for service members. Critics argue it risks mixing official government power with religious messaging. The underlying reality is that public religious events on federal property are legal if handled properly, but they predictably trigger controversy in a polarized environment. God wins. Looking for a fast way to track what's moving online right now? Head over to Qnotables.com. It's a centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.